want to show you this clip that I saw from AOC talking to Mehdi Hassan. What do you say to a young progressive or an Arab American who says to you, I just can't vote for Biden again after what he's enabled in Gaza? Okay.
What do you say to a young progressive or an Arab American who says to you, I just can't vote for Biden again after what he's enabled in Gaza? What do you say to them?
I mean, I think everyone comes to
Leftist audio.
this prospect and this conversation with a different history, different background, what they bring. You know, for an individual Palestinian American that has had their family killed, there is nothing, I mean, I am not here to lecture anyone. I also think that this election is more, in my personal view, I believe this election is about more than the president. And also, it's not just one election that's happening. We're having hundreds of elections.
Yes.
The balance of Congress, the balance of the House, the balance of the Senate, and the presidency. And I have a vested interest in protecting democracy, not just here domestically, but globally. And it isn't, I truly do not believe this as a lesser of two evils type of situation. I think about what conditions do I want to be organizing under in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
We can look at both of these individuals oppositionally as well, depending on what issue you have. But I would rather, even in places of stark disagreement, I would rather be organizing under the conditions of Biden as an opponent on an issue than Trump, who is not, he seeks to dismantle American democracy. And I am taking that personally very seriously, because we will not be able to organize for any movement towards anything if we are facing the jailing of dissidents. I mean, this is the kind of authoritarianism that he threatens.
Fascism.
And we have to take it seriously.
I think that is a fairly good answer. I probably differ from her in the sense that I think it is actually worth stressing the differences between Biden and Trump, even on Palestine, because they are just stark enough that it's worth talking about. I also think that especially if you're a pro-Palestinian protester, you are protesting on, you can protest on one playing field or another. You can protest on a playing field where Biden is in office, and Biden actually does seem to care at least a little bit about what the left-leaning people in America think, because they are, at least in part, his voters. I don't think the far left makes up as much of a proportion of Biden's vote as they would maybe like to think. I think Biden is probably in a situation where he thinks that if he appeases the far left too much, he will lose centrists and moderates who are far more populist than the far left. Populist, not populist, anyway. But I think it is worth rattling off some of those differences, right? Like, we've done this before. We know that Biden has been at the center of a lot of these humanitarian aid calls, and increasing the amount of humanitarian aid and increasing the number of trucks and smoothing out cooperation between Israel and the aid organizations. And Trump has not spoken about aid once since the war started, really. He has not really been, he hasn't spoken that much about or at all about the humanitarian issue, apart from that I think Trump has now started saying Genocide Joe. That's Trump's contribution to the humanitarian situation, is that he thinks the suffering in Gaza is worth exploiting to call Biden names. Biden has been the one talking about ceasefires constantly and constantly trying to push them through, and constantly trying to pressure Israel and, to a lesser degree, I guess, Hamas to follow through with one. Again, Trump has not spoken about ceasefire once. His contribution to this discussion is you have to finish the war. Trump's TLDR is finish the job. And that's not even to mention their position on Israel-Palestine in general. Biden supports a two-state solution. Biden has taken executive action against settlements or settlers and outposters. Biden has increased funding to Palestinians that Trump had previously cut, including funding to UNRWA, actually, hundreds of millions of dollars. And Trump wants to turn the prospective state of Palestine into a disjointed, disconnected, discontiguous Bantustan with that also includes a ethnic cleansing of Israeli Arabs who live in the Triangle area and sending them off to the West Bank, as well as giving up East Jerusalem and basically just taking one or two neighborhoods from the edge of East Jerusalem and renaming it Al-Quds as a kind of token Jerusalem, like a commiserations Jerusalem for the Palestinians. There's pretty marked differences. And given that Biden has gone from saying not that much about Palestine at all about 6 months ago to confronting Israel to a higher degree than any president since Bush Sr. in the early 90s, easily. That's kind of someone that you'd want to think is worth keeping in office. But it also means that it's not, the way she said that, it's not just Trump versus Biden. America actually has pretty effective separation of powers across the states and across the courts and the separation of power between the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So it's like, it's the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party. And I mean, if AOC is going to say that, maybe you just the Palestinian issue is written off. And I think what I want to do is maybe just look at more issues where it's really worth pointing out the stark differences between Trump and Biden, or between the Democratic Party and the Republicans. Yeah, I don't know. And it made me think, I've been meaning to do this for a little while, was actually comparing them on abortion. Because when people talk about abortion under the Democratic Party or the Republicans, I feel like there's been a common lefty talking point, which is to say that we got Biden in and Roe v. Wade got overturned anyway. But again, that is a misunderstanding of how the three branches work. Roe v. Wade was overturned by a majority conservative Supreme Court. And the reason we have that balance in the Supreme Court is because when Hillary lost the election, there were... was it 2 Supreme Court justices or was it 3? Anyway, I was either 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices were incredibly old when Trump took office, and they both died when Trump was in office. 3, sorry. And they died. So when Trump was in office and those justices die, he gets to choose the next justices. And that's where you get, what's her face? Amy Coney Barrett, right? 1 retired. Yes, 2 died, yeah. So really, one was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. So that's why Roe v. Wade got overturned. Roe v. Wade got overturned because we had a Republican in office when those 3 Supreme Court justices left, when 2 of them died, when 1 retired. Looking at that, the overturning of Roe v. Wade has actually shown how sharp that difference is when it comes to a pretty fundamental human right, I would consider, like the right to an abortion. His position on abortion, it's kind of weird because we know that Trump is kind of a degenerate, like a bit of a philanderer, a bit of a shagger, right? He does flip-flop quite a bit on whether or not he wants a national ban. He has occasionally in conversations spoken about how 16 weeks seems fair or whatever. But at the end of the day, he's an opportunist. Trump takes full credit for the ending of Roe v. Wade because he knows that's where his voters go at the end of the day. He takes full credit for it. There's been kind of flirting with the idea of a national ban. Obviously, they can't do that now because they're not in office. But so far, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we have 14 states with almost total bans. I think there are 7 more of these states have restrictions that wouldn't have been allowed if Roe v. Wade were still in place. But this is pretty widespread. And you look at this as for one example, maybe let's go look at Louisiana. Abortion completely banned with very limited exceptions. State constitution explicitly excludes abortion rights. Patients forced to make 2 trips for 1 in-person counseling and another at least 24 hours later for the abortion. Parents forced to get an ultrasound even if medically unnecessary. Do they just want to pull the heartstrings of people who are seeking out an abortion? Parental consent required for a minor's abortion. So it's they keep on, only physicians can provide abortions and not other qualified healthcare professionals. Unnecessary regulations are enforced and designed to shutter abortion clinics without basis in medical standards. It's pretty wide stretching. And then also you have all these weird, potential heartbeat bills and things like that, where most people don't even know they're pregnant by the time you reach the heartbeat thing. And it's also actually the really interesting thing about Roe v. Wade being overturned is that it revealed 2 things. One is that it kind of showed that the national debate on abortion hasn't completely been won. I think the majority of Americans do support abortion, but But at a state level, that debate has not been fully won. And it shows you what the logical conclusions of some of those abortion debates are. Like when abortion is up for debate and when you're in a pro-life area, then those debate hypotheticals that people have when they argue about pro-life, pro-choice actually come into place. For example, there's one debate argument you can make, which is it's just kind of intuitive. It's like an optical debate point, which is when you say, let's say you are in a burning building and there are 100 IVF tubes and one 1.5-year-old infant baby, but you can only save one. You can save 100 tubes or the baby. And if you're pro-life, if you think that a fertilized egg is a life, just as much as an adult's life, you would have to save the tubes, right? You'd have to rescue the tubes. And then I guess you just have to carry them out whilst the baby is getting toasted. Yeah. But that's not even like a debate hypothetical. Again, it matters to have these debates because it turns out that Alabama, we've spoken about this before, that Alabama ruling just recently this year said that there were 3 couples who had frozen embryos and they were accidentally destroyed. And an Alabama ruling found that those 3 couples were allowed to pursue wrongful death lawsuits. And then these IVF clinics were like, oh God. So like accidents happen with IVF and people can sue us for wrongful death if we do it. So why would we do IVF? Fuck that. And that's what they did. The 3 largest clinics in Alabama paused their IVF services. They just produced a total chilling effect on IVF. Another debate argument that has also seemed to transcribe into reality is contraception, because not all contraception stops fertilization. Some contraception works in a way that stops the egg from implanting into the womb. I think it's to do with, I can't remember exactly, but it's something to do with whatever's in the womb that the egg attaches to and implants. I think contraception like reduces that or something. I don't know. But it stops the egg from implanting successfully into the womb. But again, that's not what life apparently doesn't begin when you're already a unique genetic code when you're implanted into the womb. The life would begin when it's a fertilized egg, not when it implants. So that would make some contraceptive measures murder. So again, like, because the implantation happens after conception. And Nevada governor, amongst others, Republicans in the United States have, again, this guy vetoed a right to contraception bill last year, conflating it with abortion. And again, logically speaking, if you are pro-life, if you believe life begins at conception, that is logically consistent. So not only is abortion under threat, but so is IVF and contraception. Contrast with Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Biden signed an executive order after Roe v. Wade was overturned, again, to try and enforce as much as they could with executive orders. They're limited, but to protect and support patients who are traveling out of state for medical care, because obviously that's going to become a thing. People are going to have to move out of state for abortions, to protect access to contraception. I think helping ensure that the ACA guarantees free birth control and contraceptive counseling, strengthening privacy protections for doctors and patients. And at the state level, the debate over abortion has had to be reignited, and people have had to just debate for abortion rights. And obviously, the more Democrats that are in a state, the more chance that debate has of being won on the Democratic side. So Ohio, which was a Republican state or Republican majority House and Senate, they still managed to pass abortion rights because there were at least enough Democrats there to get enough moderate Republicans over there to pass abortion protections. And where there is a significant or a sufficient Democrat presence, they've been able to do this quite a few places across the country. So that's a really good way to put it, I think, from AOC at the beginning, that it's not really the difference between Trump and Biden, although there are large differences. It's a country with 3 branches. It's the Democratic Party versus the Republicans. And if you're really saying that over this one issue in Gaza, where, again, there are still very marked differences between Trump and Biden, that everything else just gets to go down the drain as well. I just think that's a really, like you need to vote for the Democratic Party in America. And also the fact that, not to mention all of Trump's threats to democracy and the whatever else, every election that he loses is fake. Come on. Anyway. But I just thought that was really interesting to me. It was really interesting to me to see how that pro-life discussion actually has translated into real-life politics. Like, I don't think people really understand. And it's also not to mention, like, you don't even need to make the philosophical arguments necessarily about right to choose, like, your bodily autonomy. Does anyone really have the right to physically use their body, like to attach themselves to your body in any way? Some would argue yes, some would argue no. Does life really begin at conception? Like, do we really value someone just because of their genetic code? Like gene expression can still continue after you're dead. So, like, do we really value, is that like, as someone who's dead, but there's still gene activity going on, does that mean that they're really still alive? I would probably say no. I feel like your human consciousness is quite an important variable, more so than heartbeats or anything else, because that's, you think, therefore you are. But there's also a practical argument. There's also a very just standard political argument, which is that it doesn't seem to be that much evidence that anti-abortion laws stop abortions, especially now, because we are long past the days of coat hangers and shady doctors and all that, because in the pharmaceutical industry, like right now, what a lot of people do is they seek pharmaceutical options to abortion as well that are very, very hard to control for, because it's like, especially in America, right? So, yeah, like it's there are so many horrible ramifications, and this all came from Trump winning in 2016. Like the amount of damage that a president can, like Trump can inflict, even years after even after they're out of office, they can set things in motion like that, because obviously it was Trump's Supreme Court justice picks that resulted in that decision taking place under Biden's presidency. Biden couldn't kick the court justices out, so he couldn't pack the courts, because if you pack the courts, then everyone does it. So, anyway, that's just my opinion. Okay.